Hi, I'm Aitch Alberto. I'm the director of Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and this is Young Entertainment Mag.
So we are really excited that the movie is about to release, and everyone's really excited to see Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe on the big screen now. So we were curious, how familiar were you with this story before you took on this project? Were you familiar with the book and the book series?
So I found the book off a recommendation of a friend from a friend in 2014, which was shortly after the book was in the world and release. I had never heard of it. But I think I read it in one sitting and it just unlocked something in me that truly is unexplainable. But I was so clear of what the movie was after reading it and while reading it that it became my life's work to make this happen. It's been a long journey. It's been 9 years to date, but I wrote a version of the script in 2016 and reached out to the author Benjamin, and I said, I did this thing and I want to come and visit you. And we spent 4 beautiful days in El Paso in 2016. And at the end of it was totally like immersing myself in Ari and Dante's world. And at the end of that visit, we were sitting at a Mexican restaurant in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And he said, these boys were mine, and now I give them to you. And that was the beginning of a very long, sometimes difficult, but fulfilling journey to get to this point. So I'm really excited that we're now here and the movie's about to be in theaters across the country.
It's definitely a long journey, but to see that it got to this point, it was really exciting. So, what was it about this story and these characters that really struck you the first time that you got to know them that made you want to bring their story to the big screen?
I thought the story and in the book, it was Ben had written something so lyrical and so gentle with characters that we don't often see in front of the camera. And that to me was the most inspiring part. I thought it played against tropes and stereotypes, against the Latino community in specifically. And to me, that was something that felt really refreshing and urgent and necessary to bring to the big screen, because I think often these stories are told through a very sort of stereotypical and not often authentic lens. And I thought I could bring that to the screen, was the authenticity, my lived experience in a way that we haven't seen before. And in turn, give the Latinx community an alternative or a different option on how we talk about masculinity, toxic masculinity, and the painful journey of accepting ourselves, which is often the most difficult thing that we could do, right? So yeah, those were all the themes, and I think I tried to touch on as many because it felt necessary, um, to tell a story that we haven't seen, and it felt really refreshing, and that's what I hope I did, and I honored the essence of what the book was.
So interesting that you mentioned that because it's good that we're in a time where we feel like a lot of books and movies they feature more representation that they have certainly in decades past, and so I think a lot of our readers are really interested in when a new queer romance comes out. What is it about it that sets it apart from ones that we've seen before? And obviously, like you mentioned, the authenticity of it, the fact that these characters are of Latino background and things like that, that definitely sets it apart. Would you say that that's probably the most different from any other kind of story like this that you've seen? Are there other elements that you think would set this movie apart from others that are more examples of things that we haven't really seen in movies before?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to sort of like distill this story to a queer story or a Latino story, but I think it's so much more. I think it's a celebration of a reflection of myself, of people that I love, in and celebrating the nuances of everything that is, right? To me, Ari really never claims his sexuality, right? He claims his love for Dante, which I think is what the message of this story is that love transcends all, whether it be identity and sexuality. So I am someone who's very passionate about not othering myself or othering the characters that I work in with, or the stories that I'm a part of. Because I think, it's important to sort of celebrate this for what it is. And that's like the foundation of this is love, and identity is an aspect of it. It's a discovery of it, but it isn't our whole story. It informs our perspective, but we're so much more than that. And I really hope that people take that away after watching the movie.
Yeah, it's really interesting, all these different elements and different dimensions and layers that come with this story that you're talking about. And it sounds like that would just be even more of an excitement and also maybe a challenge to direct such a multidimensional story. So, what was it like to direct a project like this that has so many layers to it? Did that complicate things at all? Was that exciting? What was your approach to as a director of this project?
It was always my North Star to not distill my characters to just a simple aspect of who they are, right? So it was always like, how are we focusing on everything but what people could think this story is about? Like, how do we celebrate that? How do we show that through a more gentle lens? And I think it was like finding the moment where we're exploring love, whether it be familial or friendship or romantic, in a way that we haven't seen before. It was also a big challenge because, in so many ways, people that had a voice in the room didn't understand because we haven't seen it before, right? And I compromised a lot, but that was something that I was unwilling to compromise because I think it's necessary to sort of celebrate that and show that and challenge myself to lens a story through that perspective.
That's so great. And I also even took that away just from seeing the trailer. I feel like that really comes through just from seeing the preview of the movie. So I'm really excited for everyone else to get to see it as well and be able to see it in its full form. But one other thing that I also, speaking of the trailer, wanted to talk to you about was we get some of the pool scenes in the trailer as well. And so I'm always fascinated when I see underwater scenes because I just think that's another element of production that uh, it's just another thing that you have to think out and could be challenging. But what was your approach like directing scenes like that? Was it a bit of a challenge? Were there different logistics that you had to consider? What's it like, and what are the differences between directing something on land versus in the water?
I think Max and Reese would have a different answer than I would because they had to be in the water. So it was definitely a challenge for them, but we were taking good care of them and we had heaters and it was often cold. So yes, there was like logistical challenges to shooting in the water, but it was also such a necessity because I thought it was a perfect metaphor to Aristotle, specifically his journey throughout the film. And I never wanted to lose that. And to me, my intent was to create not only a world that was grounded, but that magic was possible. And I think water is such a visual representation of that. So to me, it was always like the direction was, how do we create a galaxy, a universe of its own underneath the water? And I'm so happy that at least there's a wink to that, that you understood that, because that was very intentional in the approach with the entire production team. So it was a necessity that I was not willing to sort of let go of. And it was such a symbol of so much. When audiences see the film, I think they'll understand how it mirrors Ari's journey throughout the film.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite scenes in the book and in the movie. And it seems like it really resonates with you, and I think it's going to really resonate with the audience as well. Would you say that that's your favorite scene in the movie? Do you have a favorite scene in the movie? If you had to pick one really special moment of the movie or throughout the filming experience, which one that really sticks out to you the most and why?
I think one of the most beautiful moments that happened in production was towards the end of the film. There's this very powerful scene that maybe we've seen versions of it, but never like this. After a very sort of violent scene, we have this gentle moment with Aristotle and his parents, which I think is truly like encompasses the whole movie in a sequence, right? It's why I wanted to make this film. It's the opportunity that we see these parents step up and sort of use their voice in a way that they don't throughout the film, right? So to me, that was really special. And I knew we were onto something because everybody on set had some visceral emotional reaction to it. I don't think there was a dry eye on set when we were shooting that, which I'm sure you know what that scene is.
I want to keep it from spoilers in case anyone watching this video hasn't seen the movie yet, but it is definitely one of the most memorable parts of the movie, and I'm really excited to see everyone's reaction to it as well.
Thank you. Yes, I'm really proud of it. And I think the scene right after that, you know, we tried to use the camera as a way to reflect Aristotle's emotions as well, because he goes through such an internal journey. So, right after the scene that we're talking about, there's this moment where I think it's the first time that we actually see Aristotle face us and face himself. So I also like visually and cinematically love that moment as well, which is also in the trailer.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what the response is going to be from people that maybe they're familiar with the book, but to see so many things that you incorporated directing wise and cinematically, I think it's just going to bring a whole new life to these characters. And I think the people that are familiar with these characters just from the book, I think they're going to be really, really excited about it. And
Yeah.
so many elements that you mentioned, story wise and character wise, there's so many unique parts of this movie. Would you say that this is how, well, obviously all of these different examples are very special, but would you say that this is different from any other project that you worked on, and if so, how?
This is my first feature. So I've done short films in the past. I think yes. And I think the reason that it's different is because I'm in a place in my life where I've been able to walk through my truth, which I think really influences how I approach these characters, how I approach these stories. I think earlier in my attempt to storytelling, there's such a reflection of where I was emotionally. And I think fully embodying who I am, this film is a manifestation and a reflection of that, which wasn't an easy journey to get to, but I'm so happy I did because it's so rooted in love and so grounded in that. And that's how I'm existing now.
That's great. And I think that definitely shows with all the so many different shots and so many different scenes, and even through the character representation of the movie, you could really feel the heart of everyone that worked on it and the authenticity of it all, which is really, really exciting. So that also makes me curious about what the atmosphere was like on set. I'm sure it was seemed very, very open, but there were also, like you mentioned, some very intense scenes, some even violent scenes. So what kind of atmosphere did you keep on set?
I really tried to nurture an atmosphere of everyone has a voice. Before every day, I come from a theater background, so before every day of shooting, we would start with like a trust circle of sorts. And I would sort of set the tone of like, it's hard, it's not easy to make a movie, it's stressful, but it's a story about love. And if we are constantly revisiting that intent, I think it makes the day go a little bit easier. And I think to your point, you really see that on screen. Honestly, production was magical in so many ways. And I think it's because that everybody really showed up with that love for the characters, love for each other, love for me, and love for the story. And so it's wonderful that that's coming across to audiences.
And it seems like it all really accumulated itself in your process of getting to know these characters and then becoming a director of these characters on screen. So I was also just curious about what your not so, kind of what your view was, because we see mostly Ari's view throughout this. This is pretty much from Ari's perspective. How much did you think about Dante's perspective and debate maybe showing it from that perspective? What was that process like? Because, like you said, there's so many deep emotions from so many characters in this movie. How did you find a way to balance all of them?
I think in the early stages, that was definitely an investigation and an exploration of what are my options with these characters and how do I best tell this story. But what I landed on was that it was Ari's journey that we needed to stick with. And it was also one of the biggest challenges because his journey is so internalized. But I think he had the sort of most difficult sort of arc to land on his truth, which made it for a more compelling story. And I think it was everyone around him was informing it, right? But as we see in the film, I don't think he's recognizing the love that is around him. And I think that that's the most sort of beautiful aspect of this story, is that we see him sort of land on a version of that by the end of the film, and I don't think I'm spoiling that. It's it's sort of, that's, his story was the most compelling story to stick with, and that's also what the book does. It's, I think audiences and readers love Dante so much because we only see Dante from Ari's perspective, and which is something so beautiful that I didn't want to lose in the film.
I love that. I think that's such an interesting thing to consider, and I think it definitely, yeah, it definitely informs how the audience feels about all of the characters, and I just love that reason to think of all of this from Ari's perspective, and I love the thought of that. Makes me feel
Yeah.
like I'm in Ari's head a little bit more.
Yeah, and that was also one of the biggest challenges. It's like, how do I externalize his internal world? But it's also like he has the most compelling journey because I think he loves everyone around him. He just doesn't know how to show it, which is what I hope people take away from the movie. That when we start to love ourselves, see the love that we have around us, accept that love, it truly makes us unstoppable.
That's so beautiful. That was actually my next question, was what do you hope the audience is going to take away from this movie? And you got it already. It sounds perfect.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I just hope it also, like, for the community that this movie celebrates, I hope it starts a conversation that maybe is sometimes difficult to have. But I hope that this is an invitation to that, right? Especially for the Latinos that are going to be in this theater, that are going to see reflections of a version of who they are, that this is the beginning of a conversation and also of opening their minds and hearts in a way that maybe we don't often see on screen.
First off, we're all really, really excited for that to be made made public for everybody so that we could see all the reactions, and I to see everyone's reactions to this wonderful story that's being told in this new way. It's really, really exciting. But I also wanted to ask for my final question. There is a sequel to this book.
Yeah.
How familiar were you with the sequel? Have you read it? And would you consider taking on that as a project as well?
I read the sequel before it was released. I was one of the first people to get a version of it early on into Ben's process because I think him and I have cultivated such a close relationship, and these boys are mine as much as they're his now. Yes, I would love to continue to tell Ari and Dante's story. I think it's essential and important for people to go to the theater to make this first one a success, so we have the option to make the second one.
Great. Well, we're all crossing our fingers for that because this movie is absolutely beautiful adaptation. And like I said, we're all really, really excited to see all the fans of the book come to the movie and discover it in this new way. So congratulations on the movie and on this being your first feature. This is definitely a great place to, you knocked it out of the park with your first feature film for sure.
Thank you. That means so much. And thank you for having me, Ryan. It's been really lovely to talk to you.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Yeah, absolutely.